Good morning, folks. Welcome. And I know today's the day of the Melbourne races, and thank you for taking time to come to our session rather than watching the stats on TV. We promise to make it at least half as interesting as all the stuff you can see on TV today. So I'm Anu Ramraj from DXC, and co-presenting the session today with me is Farhad Saeed from American Airlines and Rick Matau from DXC. Welcome again. We're going to be talking today about battle scars from OpenStack deployments. On the agenda today is what are some of the toughest battles that we've seen our customers go through. And then we've got a success story, a winning story, thanks to Farhad from American Airlines, where we've partnered, DXC as a managed service provider has partnered with American Airlines to have a successful stack and a successful application onboard at American Airlines. And Rick is going to tie it all out with talking about the toughest battle of all, which is managing client expectations. So on to the battles. And just in terms of intro, what I'm going to share today is based on my role as a senior engineering manager with HP Public Cloud. So with Public Cloud, we had one of the largest deployments of OpenStack, and it was over several thousand nodes, and it was a neat challenge doing the automation and engineering and for the deployments across these thousands of nodes. And after that, I moved on to DXC, doing managed private clouds based on OpenStack for our clients, including American Airlines. So we're going to talk to you today about some of the challenges we see. So what are the typical ones we see? Of course, the client makes a decision to deploy OpenStack. I think it's a great decision, a brave decision. And would you all agree? Yes, yes, a brave decision. And immediately they're faced with challenges. Do you go with upstream OpenStack, or do you choose a distribution? And we would highly recommend going with the distribution, and there are multiple vendors that do offer really good distributions out there. And it's above and beyond the distribution, because you still have to figure out what's the right infrastructure that works with the distribution. So you might end up with a load balancer that's not supported with a particular version of OpenStack that's supported by the distribution. So just getting that mix right and delays because of that is something that we see as a challenge. And then good luck to you if you decide to go deploy OpenStack on some older hardware. Anybody try that? Anybody try deploying OpenStack on hardware that's several generations old? It's got its own unique challenges. I mean, when you've got to go look up those drivers, get everything updated. So it can easily add up to months of delays there. Let's assume the client's got it right. They've got OpenStack deployed. Here comes the day the first incident occurs. And there's chaos, because troubleshooting OpenStack does require some unique knowledge of OpenStack services and understanding the dependencies between the services, Nova versus Neutron versus Cinder. And even if you get on the phone with the distribution provider, they're going to ask you, can you reproduce this? Get me this log file. And that does require a bunch of OpenStack expertise, which the client might or might not have in-house. And this goes back to one of the other points on this is, what makes this tough is that OpenStack skills are tough to hire, and they're tough to retain. So the audience out here, you should be proud that you've got OpenStack on your resume. It makes you highly valuable because it is a tough skill to get out there in the market. Let's assume they solved all these challenges, and they've got the stack running, they've got the incident processes nailed, they've got the OpenStack skills. Next is convincing the app teams. Anybody here from the apps world, as opposed to the infra world? Maybe, yes. Yes. So it's always a tug of war between apps and infra. We have somebody that's a senior manager with the infrastructure side of the house for American Airlines, and they can speak to the challenges and the tug of war with apps. Apps owners are reluctant to get the apps on OpenStack. And the business case for OpenStack is getting those apps to successfully run. And sometimes they want to go with the latest and the greatest in terms of app deployment methodologies, whether it's Ansible or containers, and then it's convincing them that those will still work on OpenStack and working through them to figure out what's the right way to do it. Is it a Heat API to do the infrastructure automation? Is it Kubernetes on OpenStack? So it's winning the challenge, winning the mind share of the apps guys is a unique challenge by itself. Let's assume you've done all of this right. You've got your infrastructure, you've got your support, you've got your apps on there. Then comes the challenge. You've got production workloads, and here comes the day to upgrade OpenStack. What do? You could do live migrate if you got another stack, if you got extra nodes. But upgrades in recent years have gotten much more, less intrusive, much more dependable, but still there's some unique challenges. And we're talking to a customer the other day that's still on Juno, and there's some that are on earlier versions, just because they've not made the leap forward. So again, this list is by no means comprehensive, but these are some of the toughest challenges we are seeing with the OpenStack private clouds that our clients deploy. Moving on to, so the vision we want to leave you with is the client does not have to do this alone. There are several good distributions of OpenStack that are available out there, as we said, and based on the use cases, they can pick the right one. And they could pick a managed services provider that can take them along the journey and kind of ease the pain and act as reinforcements for those battles. The managed services providers bring two things to the table. One is the initial consults on the design, which includes choosing the right distribution, which includes choosing the right architecture. How do you set up your networking? How do you set up your storage? Block versus object. And it also, after the design is done and after the deployment is done, they have another key role to play in terms of offering ongoing services. So what would a good managed services provider have to cover? And if you look at this list, you would say, wow, this looks very traditional. This looks like traditional ITSM. And it's IT services management. And that's true, because OpenStack does not exist in an island. OpenStack exists in tandem with other services that the client is consuming. So let's take the case that the client is a large enterprise. And we have several of them that have to do billing to individual departments based on their consumption of the OpenStack stack. So then the managed services provider has to make sure that the billing is set up right so that the individual organizations could be built. In terms of things like incident management, the managed services provider should definitely have 24/7 operations with highly upskilled OpenStack folks that guarantee a response time, right? And things like capacity management. You couldn't expect a client to just go to Horizon and plan the capacity on their own. A stack might have to be optimized for storage or for compute based on where you see the growth. And it might be a decision and it might be a continuing discussion that the managed services provider and the client have on how do they do this on an ongoing basis. So again, seems very traditional, but some of these services are applicable to OpenStack as well. Another key decision point is a RACI. Where does the managed services provider hand off to the client? And we see it work different ways for different clients. So if you look at this as a layered graph, typically we say the managed services provider will handle up to the OpenStack layer. And then the client owns the virtual machines and the applications that they onboard onto the stack. But it could be different, where the client might say, I only want to own the business outcome, which means you manage even the VMs, you manage even onboarding the apps onto the stack, because it ultimately comes to making these apps successfully run on the stack. That's where the success of OpenStack is, right? And in terms of those VMs, we've had some neat challenges we had to face. One client wanted to back up all those VMs, and the rate of the backups and the frequency they wanted to do it caused some issues by some network in terms of configuring Neutron to be able to deal with that network bandwidth. And so there's some neat challenges, and the key there is having the right conversation between the client and the provider on where the RACI is. And then to the right of the graph is you see all the integrations. And this goes to prove that OpenStack is not an island. It always has to tie in with the rest of the IT infrastructure in there. A good service needs tools, processes, and people. People are key there. And these are some of the roles that we see are important for a managed services provider to bring to the table to make OpenStack successful. The two key ones I'll highlight is the cloud ops support team. Definitely needs to be upskilled on OpenStack. Cannot be folks that are generalists. These have to have specialized OpenStack skills. And you need to quiz your managed services provider to ask them, are they going to be, how are they going to be 24/7? Are they going to follow the sun? Are they going to be doing a shift model in some location, et cetera, et cetera? Those are all good questions for your managed services provider. Another key role is your DevOps cloud engineer. And I couldn't highlight the importance of this role more. This is the guy who successfully onboards the apps to this OpenStack stack. And without that guy being in there, without that guy enabling the apps, you might have the best stack out there. You might have set up all your monitoring and management in place, but if your apps are not on there, then you're not successful from a business outcome perspective. So that DevOps engineer who enables the apps to onboard is key in there. And then you've got your typical roles with the account delivery execs and the cloud service delivery manager. The delivery managers enable governance roles in there, making sure they have a regular conversations with the client around, hey, what's your forward-looking capacity planning? How are we doing on handling your tickets, et cetera, making sure the governance is in there. In closing, I don't have to say this code. This is something that everybody out here is probably familiar with. The battle for OpenStack private clouds can be won. It is a battle, but it can be won with the right planning in there. And do not hesitate to go pick the right distribution out there, go pick the right managed services provider that serves your use cases. And as a testimony that that battle can be won, we're very privileged to have with us Farad Saeed from American Airlines. And we've won the battle at American Airlines when getting a critical baggage handling app onboarded to OpenStack. And DXC is proud to have done this as a managed services provider, and we continue to offer our services to American Airlines. Please welcome Farad.
Thank you, Anu. Good morning, everybody. I'm Farad Saeed, Senior Manager of American Airlines. My team and I are responsible for various enterprise services, storage, virtualization platform, load balancing, and so on. Today, I'm here to share my journey with OpenStack at American Airlines. Before I get started, anybody here in production with OpenStack or will be in the next 3 months?
Wow, pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Guys will be available for any questions, but feel free to stop me during my slides. About 2 years ago, we started with a vision. As any large enterprise, we have been a virtualization shop for the last 11 plus years. And obviously, few physical deployment we still do. But we started with this 4 quadrant. We wanted to get to a hybrid solution. In this picture, the private is our internal data center, and the public are the public clouds. I'll be focusing on the 2 lower quadrants in this presentation. During our journey, our focus was to raise open source usage across the enterprise. We already do quite a few, but we want to focus on them. And the future of hosting must support our business agility, some portability, and a DevOps culture. That's the roadmap we started about 2 years ago. So, my journey with OpenStack. Yeah, guys, OpenStack journey, we had few bumps. First bump we ran into was networking. We had to work very closely with our network team to set up a repeatable process where we can duplicate that over and over again in various environments. Olu already mentioned this. In a large enterprise such as us, OpenStack doesn't stand by itself. It has to integrate with existing networking, backup, restore, monitoring, SLAs, and so on. We ended up testing about 4 distributions of OpenStack types. That makes a difference. You guys need to pay attention. Who do you have the strong partnership with? What is their roadmap? Where will they be tomorrow when you need them? One of the other things that we did, we started trying to implement OpenStack on our own platform. We are trying to create our own platform with networking. We quickly realized that we are much better off and get there quicker if we start with a reference architecture. And we did end up in a converged platform for our OpenStack deployment. Target workloads. What do we run today at OpenStack? At American Airlines, our goal for cloud, both internal and external, is PaaS first, platform as a service. We standardize on Cloud Foundry for our PaaS layer, both public cloud as well as internal. Pivotal Cloud Foundry was our first workload that went into production. I have to mention one of these applications that just went live a few weeks, and thanks to DXC. Backtracker. It's a web-based application, allows end-to-end tracking from check-in to delivery of passenger bags, priority parcels, and aircraft ground equipment. Our standard next workload, our standard Linux distribution today is Red Hat. We are promoting that on OpenStack in non-production environment. We also see a rising demand for Ubuntu. We are testing that as well. And the third is the container that we are looking at. Still TBD. Various teams are deploying Docker and Kubernetes in various configurations and topologies. One of the other reasons, besides speaking on this session, I'm here to learn from you guys. What are you guys doing with Kubernetes? What are the topologies we are going to move forward with? There was some conflicting information we are getting, so we are still vetting those out before we decide what's the role of OpenStack for containers, if there is any. Yeah, what did we learn? Guys, journey to cloud is a cultural shift. Beside all the technical challenges that you will face, you must take care of the culture first. All the different silos and disciplines, as we know in an enterprise, has to be broken down. I'll tell you one other thing. You must get your executive sponsorship. My team and I was lucky enough to have full support from all the way from our CIO to my managing director during this journey. That's important. I cannot stress enough about that. Train and restructure your teams. just because we work this way today, that doesn't mean that's how it needs to be. A cloud journey requires high collaboration. Work hand in hand, networking, security, middleware, application team. Everybody needs to come together. Next to the technical challenges, as I mentioned before, we ended up testing 4 distributions of OpenStack. We found out the less is more. Folks who had done less customization stay close to the trunk, easy to implement, easy to maintain, easy to upgrade, and easy to roll it out. That's our experience. Last, bring your operations team and bring them early. You may have your own IT operations internally. You may have a managed service provider. Don't wait until you are ready to go to production to bring them in. Bring them early. You will need them, they need you. Partner with them and partner with them early. What's next? We are running Metaka in production right now. We are testing Newton in the lower environment. We are interested in Ironic for bare metal provisioning and orchestration. We are looking at Magnum, as I mentioned before. Where does the container fit? That's still TBD. And the various topologies of Kubernetes. How does that go with OpenStack? Do we need to fit that in? But the most important one that I want to tell you, automate anything and everything that is possible, both for your internal and public cloud. Automate, automate, and automate, guys. Container and OpenStack, one last thing. It's an interesting time we are there, but how you deploy containers and where you go with it, that's yet to be determined, but we are working on it. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to Rick Metto from DXC.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Fahad. Hey guys, my name's Rick Matto. I run a global engineering and architecture team that's been deploying private clouds since 2009 for DXC and OpenStack private cloud since 2015. So I'm here just to give you a few takeaways. I think there's a battle of hearts and minds when it comes to OpenStack, and in terms of the minds, there's lots of collateral here today and over the 3 days for you to get the technical skills and experiences that you can bring to bear for your deployment. But I want to talk a little bit about the human side, the mind side, and both Anu and Fahad touched on that in terms of getting the right sponsorship and how do you get yourself through the program. So hopefully share some stories across many industries, many cultures. They're all pretty consistent, is what we're seeing, and we have a lot of experience globally. Now, I want to talk a little bit about here. So let's talk about how we avoid the pitfalls of going on the futile task of bringing into an existence a unicorn. I also want to talk a little bit about how we expose our SQL Squirrel crusades to the broader organisation, because you're going to need them to be successful, right, and continue to lead from a Mode 2 perspective, and importantly, obviously, how to get the recognition you deserve at the end of the implementation. So look, just be a few key takeaways along the way. We will have some Q&A after this where we can talk in more depth, particularly about the American Airlines experience as well. Now, I remember yesterday, Jonathan Bryce, in the keynote address, he mentioned that OpenStack is no longer a science experiment. You know, in the 2017 survey results, it told us that 2/3 of deployments are now in production, and that was borne out when we asked the question earlier. But that means that now is the time that we're going to be judged on our business value. The success of our outcomes will be judged relating to the business. And that's critical because we need to understand what that value pertains to. Know the why. understanding your North Star, as I call it, is going to get you through those periods of where uncertainty prevails, and understanding exactly what it is that the business is looking to derive beyond the technical capabilities that we're deploying with OpenStack. As Jessie Itron, as she's known, spoke to in the GoTo conference this year, is what I'm doing of value. Now, all right. Now, as part of the education process, there's a couple of things we've got to understand. So we know how frustrating it is when a business comes to us with a solution. And equally, and likewise, we shouldn't be coming to them with preconceived solution artifacts, jargonised narrative relating to their ask. What we need to do is understand that the CXOs in the organisation are really nervous. We're at a time of significant change. And what we need to do is help allay that fear by speaking to them in a language that they understand. We've got to be able to articulate things simply in terms of what it is. So for American Airlines, it was a scalable, automated platform to host, to perform PAS, or provide PAS to the organisation, in this case, the baggage application. Now, that should be your North Star, something that's very succinctly understood by the business, and it needs to be understood by everyone that's working within your deployment as well. All right. Keep it simple, and that generally works. Now, we've spoken a lot about the buy-in, so I'm just going to touch on this for a bit. This is where we need to acknowledge that we exist in a hybrid estate. And it's one thing saying we acknowledge that. Obviously, there's some key takeaways. You need to be able to identify all of your affected parties. And that includes going back into the legacy organisation. And really, from a human side, bringing them into the tent with you is going to make them a part of the solution and stop some of the problems we've seen in the past of creating speed humps just for the sake of that. And it's also going to ensure that that when the time comes for their support, you will have their support when it's required, and that becomes critical. I think, knowing some of the organisations I've been into, you may have to put it on a post-it note and stick it on their screens. And the reality there is that you've got to do what you've got to do to get buy-in. Right? That becomes key. So don't stop leading from the front. Don't stop with your mode 2 thinking and design principles. Just always make sure you keep an eye on the rear view mirror to ensure that they're still with you. The organisation is still with you. All right, so you got there. This is the thing at the end. The trick here is you need to be able to quantify what you've achieved beyond the business value. And it's a real simple trick. You've got to have a story for every level within your organisation. Now, a 20% IT efficiency is really great, but a 15% productivity gain for your application providers, your application teams, is probably even better. But a demonstrable speed to market of new, useful client-facing applications is what's going to get the CXOs crowing about your deployment and singing the praises of your success. So have a story, a simple story about what it is you've enabled. Now, this isn't supposed to be an anti-Facebook quote, and look, I get it. Progress is important, right? And any progress is better than none at all. But what you shouldn't look to do is have that better done than perfect mantra permeate every level of your deployment. Like merely pointing at horizon and throwing a business user at it and saying, look, have at it. That's not job done. That is not job done. Relevance is the key. You need to be able to speak back to what it is you've achieved. Now, we all love the challenge and we all want to play with the newest technologies. It's rewarding both personally and professionally. But the AA story was a success because your bags arrived at the same airport at the same time as you did. It was useful and it was relevant. Now, wish you all your best of luck with your OpenStack deployments. We've left a bit of time at the end of this to talk to, if you have any questions of Farhad in regards to the AA or Anu or myself, in regards to how to win the hearts and minds of your clients and your internal business stakeholders. Probably turn that over. If there are any questions, if anyone would like to know more about the American Airlines story.
Thank you, Rick.
That's some questions here at the
Yeah.
front too.
There was a question
Might
there.
just grab a microphone, Rick, if we could. Oh, that's his. No, there's a couple of questions.
So I'll introduce you to folks.
Yeah, Rick's going to throw the microphone around for us.
Hi there, question for Farhad. Sorry I missed the first 10 minutes, so you might have covered this already, but did you have to integrate with any of your legacy applications for your baggage handling system?
We did not actually. As I was mentioning, we set forth as a PaaS first. Our first workload was Pivotal Cloud Foundry, because Cloud Foundry is our standard PaaS, both for public and internal. So we put PCF on top of OpenStack as the first workload. And the two applications that we're talking about, and the one that Backtracker, that's the application that was rewritten for Pivotal Cloud Foundry.
And supplementary question, how long did it take you to go from outset to production?
18 months.
Okay, thanks.
18 months. Yes.
I don't think anybody can hold up. Have you done now, I'm sure you have, an ROI of the OpenStack environment against a legacy virtualized environment? Are you seeing like the output itself comes as expected to?
So we are, very good question, by the way. We have been talking about it. We haven't done that exercise yet, but we are comparing with our, obviously we have been a virtualized shop for the last 11 years, right? As anybody else, as any other times. That would be the next step, right? So, Bolu did invite me, but we just went live about 2 months ago. Now we're going to start hacking the legacy environment.
I have one more.
Yeah, sure.
And then, so you started the baggage application.
Right.
Now, what do you think that your developers are excited to come to OpenStack now, or are they kind of like waiting and seeing?
Again, another excellent question. So, a couple of my colleagues and last night we were having this discussion. So we had an appreciation lunch from the development team a couple of weeks ago, and I reached out to the director of that application team, and I asked for some feedback. The feedback that I received said, from a development perspective, container still gets into the little bit of the infrastructure space, right? But when it comes to people of Cloud Foundry, developers are very excited. They love it, right? Because that gives them they feel that they have the power to do end-to-end, right? So from the coding all the way from the deployment. Right? And this is the first time we received this type of feedback. Yeah.
Question here.
One
So,
more, yes, Robert, please.
Yeah, so with TXC, do you have a, are they doing, obviously it sounds like you guys do the build, the design, and the build.
Right.
Are you also doing the operations as well with them? Do you have an SLA notifications and that?
We do. We certainly do. So, like I said, it's always two aspects to it. The initial design and consulting to make sure the clients are picking the right service, the right distribution, doing the right architecture. So we work hand in hand with the client on that. The second aspect is the ongoing runtime, and we certainly do that as well. So I spoke to the roles, and we can certainly bring them up. So we offer 24/7 cloud ops services. So there's folks that are standing by with OpenStack skills 24/7, and we guarantee in terms of SLAs, based on the severity, we guarantee the time to respond 15 minutes for the P1 incidents. You should have a response back. And again, it's not by somebody who's just saying we got a ticket. These are OpenStack skilled resources that stand behind to support. So definitely offer cloud ops support. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. First, who actually is consuming the OpenStack platform that you have set up from within your organization? Is it the developers, or is there any tooling or like Jenkins, or who actually consumes it, and how do they actually consume it, through CLI or what? So that's first question. Second question is, you mentioned you're running PCF on top of OpenStack. I'm curious to know what was why did you need a IaaS platform under PCF? PCF runs on public cloud, it runs on bare metal, it runs on VMware. Why the choice of running PCF on top of OpenStack?
Good question. So I'll answer your second question first and then go back to the first one. So when we first started this journey about 2 years ago, we went back and forth about what would be our cloud look like, both internal and external. We, from a governance, we decided that our cloud journey would be a pass first step. We did not see too much value of moving a virtual workload to another IaaS platform. We already have that, right? So both internal and external cloud, we started with PaaS, and we chose Cloud Foundry to be the PaaS layer, right? So when we put our application, when we put OpenStack in production, the first workload that went was pivotal Cloud Foundry. And yes, we do have a DevOps toolchain in the enterprise, which is, I'm sure, as usual, which is by GitHub, Jenkins, and so on, that does deploy the pivotal Cloud Foundry. Does that answer you?
Kind of. I'm curious to know why you decided to run PCF on top of OpenStack as opposed to running on bare metal or the other platforms. Why on OpenStack?
Yeah, go ahead, Gunther.
So Michael Mills, I'm the Chief Infrastructure Architect for Airlines. I see OpenStack as a way of getting a software-defined data center where my entire corporation lives in multiple data centers in multiple regions across the world. That gives me a framework where I can take my Mode 1 application, my Mode 2 application, the correct order, there's no one and in that, I have the ability then to orchestrate the security controls, the monitoring controls, and everything. So in that ecosystem, the idea is to be able to have a security context where someone is building a brand new application to deploy a Pivotal Cloud Foundry, but they need to access an Oracle Exadata, a legacy mainframe. That coordination is now orchestrated by OpenStack. My ability to manage my capacity is now managed by OpenStack. So if I have a variable workload, I have some ability to dynamically change work from being physical servers doing something, doing batch jobs at night for analytics, to something that's doing transactional workloads for VDI for today, or maybe I need to spike into handling a weather event like a hurricane, and I need to massively reaccommodate customers and find their bags and deal with those kind of things. So this gives me that ecosystem where everything can live, and Pivotal now becomes a tenant in that ecosystem. Make sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Gunther.
Yeah, I have a question about how you expect to meet the cadence of updates with the OpenStack project. You mentioned you're on Mataka at the moment. How do you see your testing going forward, and do you expect to be able to maintain your, I guess, currency alongside the OpenStack project? It's a well-known problem that people deploy OpenStack and then have trouble upgrading it.
Good question. We had various conversations about this with so as I was telling you guys, we ended up with one distribution from a partner. We obviously have DXC with us. We just did one upgrade. Within 3 months after we went to production, we had to do a patch up, the dot upgrade. So the engineering team does the upgrade or the patches from the lower environment. Then we basically hand it over to our service providers such as ES. Right? But we do think that we're going to be about 6 months to about a year behind the distribution that is supported by the vendor or the partner that we chose. Does that address your question? So
Yeah.
Because there is a gap between the vendor partner, what they are providing, right? They have a 6-month gap, and if we are doing another 6 months, it gives us about a year behind.
Yeah, I can understand, and I'm just foreseeing, lagging behind with security updates and compliance and that kind of thing, may become a problem, particularly for my implementation.
A lot of the automation and the upgrades are also being automated. We are using Ansible to do that, and I have my engineering team here as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and my other question that I had was, how did you bring your, your business side along with you on the journey? It's a large amount of change to decide that, from a technology point of view, we're going to change the way we're doing business. But then, how did you encourage or bring your business colleagues along with you to, help them embrace that change as well?
So when we quickly started with the governance model, where we invited all the way from our CIO, VP, and other business partners into that governance as we walk that path, right? What we should do, what we should focus on. The PaaS first decision was not made in a vacuum, right? That was a joint decision. We do understand that we take full advantage of these new toolings like the Cloud Foundry. A lot of this application has to be refactored or rewritten, right? We try to push some of the application without making too many changes to Cloud Foundry. There was some performance concern there. But our motto is, don't just go to cloud because you want to go to cloud, right? If you want to push new functionality, if you want to rewrite the project, then target that PaaS environment. Target that PaaS and get there first. Business, IT, both are hand in hand and provide us the governance. We pull them in from our CIO up. Wasn't a quick journey, guys.
But, can you make it a little more
Please.
on that?
Yeah.
So, I remember Airlines got burned a long time ago in the Java Wars. At one point in time, we had Blue Dragon, Blue Martini, ATG, WebSphere, WebLogic, and kind of the other ones that no longer exist, and most people, if you're not really old enough, you probably never heard of. So one of the things that we learned is we needed to move away from platform-specific functionality, like writing towards features of ATG or writing features of WebSphere or WebLogic, to keeping it mainly just Java code. That caused us to get to the point where we were able to go from like Java on WebSphere to Java on Tomcat or Liberty, which is a new version of lightweight container for WebSphere. A lot of our applications were then written in just a Spring framework, so adopting Cloud Foundry was a really easy path for our developers. And since if you're a Java developer, you write in Spring, moving into Cloud Foundry is really, really simple. And all of these tiny things that my group causes, like, hey, now that version is not supported, or that's an OS thing, or you need storage. All that stuff is totally transparent to them. They don't have to deal with it at all. So for the developers, they love that concept. So for the people who write Java code, that movement to Cloud Foundry was really easy. So it wasn't really hard to convince that Java group to move over. The community is what's causing us to have to do IIS.
And to add to the other, we did receive some good feedback from the development team on Cloud Foundry. They basically love it. That gives them the end-to-end control.
Right. And in terms of upgrades and updates, I think from a managed services provider perspective, we work closely with the various distribution vendors, and we test and make sure what's the downtime, is it disruptive, what's the impact on the workload, and then we have the conversation with the client to plan it out and say, can you afford this downtime? Can we orchestrate this? And then plan out accordingly based on the workload, balance it out, and then orchestrate that. So that's one of the efforts we do to keep up and keep abreast of the latest versions.
So to dovetail on that, you've built this great cloud, right? And now you have the ability for billing and chargeback internally to your customer. Are you finding the demands around SLAs now you want to include the business units more, get the most out of your cloud? Are you seeing that pushback internally from your customer?
Okay, so first of all, I'll be happy with showback. Never mind chargeback. Just let me tell you.
Yeah.
I don't think my finance will agree, but showback, if I can actually show my business unit what it is costing the legacy environment by the cloud, I'll be happy. We are testing some tools between both internal and external cloud for those capabilities. We can have a conversation what we are doing there. What else did you ask?
No, because there is this now cost internally, right? The business units are saying, all right, you're going to charge me, so I have SLA demands internally if you would like me to port applications over.
Right.
Not everything is going to be reconstructed to fit within your cloud. However they want to use the capabilities of your cloud.
You want to talk to the SLA? Go ahead.
So, our corporation, everyone always had maybe what they use. So, in fact, this historian one reason why we use DXC is because they have that ability to charge back at the business unit level. So they already used to that. So they're expecting our cloud to have the same uptime and performance as traditional. So it's not a new demand from them. It's just they're now expecting us to run mode 2 with the same ability as mode 1.
Right, it's expected. Yeah.
It is
Expected.
And those are the conversations that, so remember what
Yeah.
I said, bring your operations in
Shinska.
R&D, so you can go have those conversations, folks.
Exactly. And as a managed services provider, we guarantee the SLAs around availability, and we set the monitoring in place so we can stand behind it. Yeah.
That's having problems doing that? The managing the expectations and the meeting the SLAs that we have for traditional physical and virtual environments as opposed to what you're doing with OpenStack?
Well, we've been doing virtual for over a decade.
Yeah,
So,
I get that.
so we don't really have an uptime issue on the virtual piece.
But I'm saying comparing that to your, you've been up for what, 3
About
months?
3 months,
So comparing those two.
so far,
have you
I
been
guess
having
I'm
issues?
old to knock. So far, no. But the key to that, reference architecture, a prescribed platform from the distributor of the OpenStack, right? And obviously, the managed service providers who has that skill set and capability to keep that up, right? Yeah, even after the patch we did, 1 or 2 patches that we did, it's been okay so far.
From a corporation level, we run active-active data centers.
Right.
So if the application can support being active-active in data centers, they're set that way. We only patch one side at a time. We can swing the workload across. People who go active-passive, they have a outage risk, but they can quickly fail both the other side, and all depends on what their reputation on what the impacts of them is.
The reason I asked the question is allegedly it's supposed to be more, if you architect it correctly, more stable, better uptime. Those are the selling points that you're going to try and sell the CIO or CTO. So, but I know from painful experience in the real world that is not.
From an architecture design standpoint, because we have people rewrite their applications into this cloud boundary type of pattern, it broke down a lot of the state dependency issues that would cause outages in the past. So our ability to
Should we take it off?
resilient is more of the fact that we are using this cloud boundary.
Here.
JavaScript with a lot of REST-based calls. The legacy code was slow system. It's also that helps us abstract a lot of outages that your modeling out in the past would have had to issue.
Other than the few hiccups that we initially experienced from various vendors, since we decided on a platform and the partner is going.
Thank you, folks. If there are any further questions, I think we should take it offline. I think we ran over, so thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.